And CBS News chief White House correspondent Major Garrett is with me now from Washington. Major, a lot to cover. Let's start with President Trump set to meet with Secretary Tillerson and Secretary Mattis today. As we mentioned, this meeting comes as the president is responding to reports that Tillerson called him a moron. How will all of that affect today's lunch?
Well, look, all these lunches have a certain dynamic to them, even under the best of circumstances, because cabinet secretaries always come to the White House either with an agenda or to deal with the president on what he wants them to focus on and maybe reorient their own agenda. That will clearly be the case with Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, and the backdrop is, as you just described it, let's just say, a bit challenging. The president is going to make an important decision later on this week to decertify the Iran nuclear deal. Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, would prefer he not do that. So would James Mattis, the Defense Secretary. But they've lost that argument. And what they've instead opted for is persuading the president, okay, if you're going to decertify the Iran nuclear deal, don't pull out of it entirely. Give us an opportunity to continue to work with those other signatories to the Iran nuclear deal. And at that level, the administration is all on the same page. So in that respect, with Iran, it shouldn't be that difficult. North Korea is another problem, a big problem for this president and this administration. And the president told Forbes magazine in another part of that interview that he believes he strengthens his chief diplomat, Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, when he calls him out publicly and says, as he did recently, Tillerson was wasting his time looking for either direct or indirect talks with the North Koreans on the nuclear program. The president has fundamentally decided that talking to the North Koreans at any level, directly or indirectly, isn't going to work, and only the most intense and unified global economic pressure that he can muster. And it's worth pointing out this administration has accomplished more on that front than any other previous U.S. administration, is the only thing that's going to change the behavior of the North Koreans. And the president basically is going to hold to that policy until he gives up on it. And that kind of puts Rex Tillerson on the sidelines. So those are some of the dynamics around this luncheon meeting. But look, no luncheon meeting with the President of the United States is ever definitive unless you're going to get sacked. And there's no sense, as thin as the ice is beneath Rex Tillerson, that the President wants to give him the heave-ho just yet. There is a great sense here in Washington that Tillerson probably won't last through the calendar year, but today won't be the end of his participation in the White House, this administration, or future luncheon dates with the president.
Well, Major, as you know, Secretary Tillerson and Mattis have a very good relationship, or good working relationship, with Senator Bob Corker, who helped negotiate the Iran deal. The president is continuing to feud, and I want to draw your attention to the tweet most recently that the president just sent. I know you have to respond to these tweets, but he is the president of the United States, and he writes, the failing New York Times set little Bob Corker up by recording his conversation, was made to sound like a fool, and that's what I'm dealing with. Meanwhile, Jonathan Martin has said that's not true. You know, Corker in that New York Times interview said the president has a history of saying things on Twitter that are not true. I mean, what is the impact of this continued back and forth? California is burning. 85% of Puerto Rico does not have power. The president is tweeting about Jamel Hill and the failing New York Times.
Right. So let me try to deal with that the best I can. Bob Corker, the senator from Tennessee, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, knew exactly what he was doing when he first sent out a tweet Sunday morning describing the White House as an adult daycare center where someone wasn't on their shift. A clearly derogatory remark focused entirely on the President of the United States, and then calling up Jonathan Martin and agreeing to an interview, or somehow that got worked out. And of course, Corker's aides were on the call. That happens with almost every interview on a telephone with a senator of the United States, just as it does if they're on television. Aides are there listening because they want to make sure they understand what their boss said. So if they have to challenge anything printed, they have a transcript or something verifiable to refer to. So the president loves to create false narratives that either put people he is critical of in a bad light or the media in a bad light in order to extract some perceived advantage. But when it doesn't add up, I don't know what the advantage is. Only the president seems to. And it's worth pointing out, Vlad, because I know if Senator Corker's staff was watching this, they would say, you know, Senator Corker didn't help negotiate the Iran deal. He opposed the way the Obama administration pursued that deal. But he realized, as did many other Republicans in the House and Senate, that they were not going to talk the Obama administration out of cutting a deal with Iran and the other member nations who are signatories to that deal. So they created a congressional process which, by the Obama administration and any future administration, had to constantly tell Congress whether or not Iran was living up to the terms of the deal. That congressional oversight process, Senator Corker and those who supported it, of which there are many in the House Republican Conference and Senate Republican Conference, is the only means by which Congress can sort of supervise the deal as it plays out. And Senator Corker would say that's not negotiating that deal, that's keeping an eye on it. And it's that decertification process that the president is likely to set in motion later on this week.
Major Garrett at the White House for us, helping us unbundle it. Major, I got to ask you, the word little that the president uses, is that a joke, or is that, you think that's a misspelled word?
Oh, Vlad.
I mean, some people, everybody in the newsroom is trying to figure it out. You never know.
You never know. I would just only observe that maybe Senator Rubio could explain to Senator Corker what the difference is between lil and little. I'll leave it to them to sort it out.
Major Garrett reporting from the White House. Thank you, Major, as always.